All right. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Learn with Anirudh. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've clicked on this episode, I am already confident that you guys are really excited to get started with Python programming. So you're going to have a question right now which might state, what are we learning in this episode? So without further ado, let me go ahead with the answer to that exact question. Now, in this particular episode of Learn with Anirudh, we're going to cover all the fundamentals of Python programming. If you haven't taken a look at my introduction to Python video, do take a second to look at that. There's a lot of facts, lots of really interesting things that will make you fall in love with Python. The link is in the description box for that. Now, coming to this episode, I'm going to be teaching you guys everything you need to actually get started with the programming language. A lot of important foundational concepts such as how to add comments to your code, how do you work with variables. Then we have conditional statements, all the if else statements, those are conditional statements. And then we have the various operations that you have to understand in Python, be it arithmetic operations, bitwise operations, all of that. So we're going to take a look at all of this, and at the end as well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be discussing the very important concept of looping, for loops and while loops, as some of you all might already know it. So we're going to take a detailed look at understanding all of these concepts by making use of theory and a lot of programming examples, so that all of you all can have the complete expertise that you guys are looking for. And with the theory and with the practical examples and explanations at the end, make sure to stay till the end, because I have a quiz planned out for you guys where I have a couple of simple programs that I want you guys to write, and I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. Everything you need to write those programs and to answer those quiz questions, you can find it in this particular episode. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Now, let's get started with a quick did you know. You will already know this, I assure you. Any Python developer's role that's out there today, and you should already know that Python is used in machine learning, data science, web development, almost all the domains that we have today. And that gives Python the advantage that the developers here are among the highest paid developers. Any career that involves Python really brings amazing salaries, fantastic perks all along the way. And if you're a person like me, you can definitely fall in love with the language and make a good buck out of it as well. And here's an important thing about Python. Python has been trending for the last 10 years, you already know this, but Python didn't really come to the picture in 2012 or 2013 and then, everything started. Not really. Python actually came into being 30 years ago, and year on year, it has seen continuous improvements. It has seen so many interesting developments that it makes it a beautifully well-rounded language with 30 years of experience to make sure that it is as easy as possible for all of us to write. Now, one interesting concept that you might not know in Python, however, is for the fact that you can actually have the chance to define infinity here in Python. Of course, in real life, when we say we're defining infinity, people might think that you might have gone a bit bonkers, but we all know that in actual life, we cannot define and we cannot place a number on infinity. But here in the case of Python, we can do it. Now, I'm going to have a short video sometime later during the week to maybe give you guys a quick insight about how you can get this done. And of course, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you all for your support. Your subscription really means a lot to me, and it helps me help a lot more of you guys as well. A lot of you all are giving me amazing feedback and you're showing all your support, and do understand that since I'm doing this full time, it means a lot to me. So thank you all so much. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I hope by the end of this episode, I get a chance to earn your subscription for the same. Now, let's dive right into the heart of the concept. The first question you might have is, okay, we know all the facts that we need to know about Python, but how do we get started to actually write code? Well, to write code, you need three very important things, ladies and gentlemen. It's the environment, it's the syntax, and it's the structure. Now, let me break all of these things down into its most simple sense so all of you all can understand. Let's take a look at environment. Now, in the case of environment, this is the place, this is the tool, or this is the interface that you will actually use to write your Python code in. Now, if you've had a chance to actually write Python code or any other programming language, pause the video here and give it a thought. Which tool have you used where you open the tool and start writing your code in? Take a second to think about that, and if you have, quickly head to the comment section and let me know what tool you've used. Now, the environment might be the code. So what is the environment that we're going to be using for Python? Working with Python is going to be really easy because there's multiple ways through which you can work. Now, the first thing is the command line interface. Command line interface is like opening your command prompt, seeing a black screen and just start writing every single line of code, hitting enter, wait for it to execute, all of that. Now, some people do prefer the command line interface where, you're just writing each line one after the other and you're working with it. But then most of us who are really working on, long form code, we might find it difficult. So then you have something called as IDEs, or integrated development environments, where this will not just be a tool for you to write Python code in, but it's going to help you to do a lot more things. In fact, we have fantastic IDEs for Python. We have something called PyCharm, and of course, you guys already might know Visual Studio Code. Now, apart from just writing code, the best part here is that you can have a chance to get way more help from the tool itself. It's going to tell you what your syntax is. It can help you auto-fill the code. The best part about a very well put IDE such as PyCharm or Visual Studio is that even before you start writing the next line of code, or before you start completing the current line of code that you've written, it will automatically predict what it is that you're trying to write in, and it will ask you if it should fill it automatically. So you're going to save a lot of time. And when you're writing really complex pieces of code later on, I'm going to be showing you guys how much of a help that is. And if ever there are chances where you're trying to catch bugs, catch errors in your programs, of course, I can assure you at this moment that all of us will make a lot of errors, including me, and it is okay, because these errors, these bugs are the ones that are going to teach you way more things than all your successful output. So I'm going to show you how these IDs make it super easy to even go about debugging your programs, finding out that error quickly, and responding to all of those cute error message that Python gives out to us. Now, another important tool when you're working with Python is something called a Jupyter Notebook. A Jupyter Notebook is literally like one of your notebooks where you have multiple pages. You can sit and write your lines of code one after another and execute it in tiny blocks, tiny cells. Now, majorly throughout all the episodes where we'll be discussing Python programming here at Learn with Anirudh, we're going to be making use of Google Colab. Google Colab is basically a Jupyter Notebook that is hosted on the Google Cloud platform. And you can write even the most complex pieces of machine learning code and start executing it on your mobile phone, even if it's a 10-year-old mobile phone, because all the processing power that it uses it from the Google Cloud. All you need is an interface to type the code in, hit the play button, and your code just executes. No headache of installing it, no headache of configuring Python. Something is not working, administrator rights is not working. There's a million things which can go wrong, even though Python is the most simple programming language to install. But this just simplifies it to an even simpler level. All you have to do is open a website, start writing Python code, hit a play button, and you'll go about doing it fantastically. And of course, it is one of my most favorite programming tools ever. If you've had a chance to watch my previous content here on YouTube, you will see that wherever there is a chance for me to use Python programming code, I'll always prefer Google Colab. And I'm sure by the end of this tutorial, you guys will also prefer that, because it's pretty simple and it gets the job done regardless of wherever you are, right? So fantastic. Now, the important part about the thing we need to take a look at after environment is syntax. Syntax are like the rules that you need to follow whenever you're writing the programming language code. It's very simple. Now, whenever we try to send messages to our friends, or whenever we try to, read a blog, read a newspaper, you see that grammar has multiple rules. English has a lot of grammatical rules through which, if you do not follow the rules, sometimes the entire meaning changes. Now, there'll be so many troll posts and memes on Instagram where if you find a missing comma, there's a lot of things. There are meanings absolutely change, and it just takes something super serious into something super hilarious at the same time. So syntax is really important for a programming language. In Instagram, when you're texting your friends, it's okay. If you miss a comma, you can laugh it off. But here, you'll not be laughing it off, because if you do not follow the syntax as it is meant to be followed, Python will happily give you an error message saying, I will not execute until you fix the error. So make sure that you follow all the rules. All of these are like extremely simple rules. I understand that English rules can be very complex, but trust me, Python rules are not. And here's an example to actually prove it to you. You see that there are two print statements on your screen. One is in red color, one is in the green. Now in the red color statement, if it is put in red, there's a chance that something's wrong there. Can you find out what is wrong in that particular piece of code? Just pause, find out what is wrong and hit the comment section. I want to hear from you guys. And if you had a chance to do that, you'll realize that we have opened the double quotes here while printing something. So all we're trying to do is print a message saying hello world. This literally will be the first line of code that majority of you guys are going to write if you have never written Python code before. So you can see that we've opened the double quotes here, but we actually haven't closed it. So Python isn't going to realize. It's going to take a look at this bracket and it thinks that even this is something, it's a message that it has to print, and it's going to say, hey, where is the bracket? I cannot see the bracket. So it's going to throw you an error. To fix that, all you're going to take a look at is close the quotes and close the brackets. In a tool like Google Colab, when you actually open your braces and you open your quotes, it will automatically close it and move the cursor so that all you have to do is type in your message and you're done. Everything is closed, everything is ready. And the biggest thing here in Python, we do not require semicolons for every line. That is probably the most annoying thing for me with all the older programming language, to forcefully put a semicolon. But no, Python is pretty intelligent. Python is pretty convenient for all of us. Now, the other thing that you guys have to understand is that Python is a case sensitive programming language. In its case sensitivity, you can see there are two variables on your screen. We have capital Y that has the value 1, and we have the small y that has the value 1. Now, capital Y and lowercase y are not the same. So if you actually by mistakenly use capital Y somewhere and then you want to use lowercase y elsewhere, it will not accept it. Python will say these are two different objects. I cannot go about using these. So make sure that you're very careful when using it, because whenever we are writing code, if you're used to writing a lot of English, you will automatically want to capitalize the first word, and it happens even when writing. I've been writing Python code for well over 10 years now, and sometimes it happens to me. Us programmers are going to be spending a lot of time hunting for these minute errors. We'll get all the big things correct, but we'll be struggling for these tiny bits and to fix that. Now I'm going to give you another very simple example regarding the case sensitivity about Python. Take a look at the first statement. As I just mentioned, you can see that the P in print is capital, right? Python will not accept this. As soon as even though everything else is correct, even though you read it correct, saying it's a print statement that says welcome to learn with Anirudh, it will not execute. You have to make sure that it is in lowercase as you see here. So unless you do this, Python will not accept it. So regarding the rules, you can have the amount of freedom you want in Instagram, but when it comes to Python, you definitely have to be careful out here. Now, we are done with the syntax part and we are done with the environment part. The other important thing here in Python is the structure. Structure is very, very important, and in many other programming languages, it is fine, but here it's very important. Take a look at your screen right now. There are no spelling mistakes. I can tell you this already. It's a very simple if statement and we have a very simple print statement, correct? Nothing complex. But even though there are no syntax errors in the actual typing, you can see that this will not execute. This will give you an error, but this will execute fine. What is the difference there? If you see the difference here, we have given a small gap in this code. This is what we call as indentation in Python. When we say indentation, all we're trying to say is, hey, it's like a heading. Now think of this as a heading and everything comes below the heading, and we move it slightly to the right to say that this piece of code, this particular statement belongs to this particular block of code. Now, when we see multiple lines, while I'm going to discuss all of these practically with you guys in the next section, you will see that this is very important. Without indentation, Python is it's going to give you an error and it's going to say indent the code. And the simplest way to indent the code is wherever you want the indentation, just hit the tab key. The tab key will move your code by a little to make sure that the indentation works well. So as I just told you, I'm going to reiterate on the same point again. Without indentation, there are many cases where your programming code is exactly fine, exactly as it should be, but you've missed the indentation and boom, it's going to start throwing you guys some errors, and none of us like to see errors, right? So coming to the part where we're going to actually discuss all of the code hands on, as I told you, we're going to be taking this section by section and we're going to discuss a small amount of theory and we're going to quickly open up Google Colab. We're going to go there and we're going to take a look at it practically as well. Now, the first thing I want all of you all to do is make sure that you guys know how to write comments in Python. Comments are the single most important thing whenever you're writing any amount of code. Now, here I've said that it's very important whenever you're writing lengthy code, but even if it's just one-liner code that you guys are writing, make it a habit to actually add comments. Now, all of you all, I know if you're watching this, you want to learn Python, maybe to start your career in Python. So when you actually join a company where you want to work with Python code, you will not be the only person working there. You'll be working in a team. So when someone else gives you their code and they have put no comments there, it is very difficult for you to understand. Similarly, when you provide your code to someone else and it does not have any comments, it just makes it annoying. Even though you might say, hey, this is very simple, I can understand it. Correct, that you can understand it, but what is the guarantee that someone else can understand it? So please make it a habit, and this habit is going to be the best thing that's going to happen to your Python programming career if you actually take a chance to add comments everywhere. Not everywhere, but add comments where it's necessary. That's the important thing here. So how do you add comments? Adding comments is really simple, really straightforward. It's going to take you 2 seconds to learn how to add comments. Anything which has a hashtag before it, take a look at the second line. Anything to the right of a hashtag in Python is a comment in that particular line, no matter what. On the left hand side of it, however, if there is any code on the left hand side of the hash mark, Python will execute it. The Python parser will actually execute it, but anything to the right of it, it knows that it is a comment, so it will ignore it altogether. It will never go about executing it because it knows that the developer has put it there for his or her reference. The next question you might have is, if I have to add comments to 100 lines of code, and I find it necessary to add those 100 lines of comments, don't you think it will be very annoying to use the hash key everywhere? Even though we are completely happy and okay with putting a million hashtags on our Instagram post, we can find it annoying to add comments here. So what is the most efficient way to go about adding multiple lines as comments? Well, Python natively actually does not support multi-line comments, but there is a way through which you can work with it. In the most extremely rare cases, there's something called docstring, which might cause a problem here, but nothing that you guys should be worried about right now. To add multi-line comments, just open up 3 double quotes, write any line. You can write 100 lines, you can write a story, and you can write a song, probably like how we were doing in our examinations. And at the end of it, just close the quotes again. It's 3 double quotes, open those, write all your comment, and again put your double quotes 3 times to end it, and everything in between that will be considered as a comment, and Python will not go about executing it unless in those extreme rare cases where we'll discuss why that happens in an advanced Python tutorial that I'll bring to you guys really soon. Now, adding comments is fun. The theory behind comments is fun. It's high time we go to Google Colab to take a look at this. So let's go. Alright, as you can see, all you need is a Gmail account to get started with Google Colab. This entire notebook will be shared in the description box below so that you guys can also have the exact same access to the exact same notebook, so you can execute it side by side as I do. You can edit it, you can work with it, and you can do whatever it is that you require to learn this completely. Oh, this is very simple to execute Python code. I'm just going to hit one button which says connect. Connect is basically me connecting to the Google Cloud in the backend to execute this. As I just mentioned, all of this is free to use. 99% of the features here are free to use. If you require way more computing power, way more RAM and hard disk space on the Google Cloud, not on your computer, then you're going to have to pay a certain amount. And don't worry, we are not going to get to that even in the most complex machine learning cases that we look at later on. Now, as I told you, it is really simple to execute Python code. I know it is very small for you guys to look at, so let me quickly zoom in, and I think this should be perfect for all of you all. As I told you, Python is a case sensitive programming language, so take a look at this piece of code that I have highlighted for you guys right now. Now, if I execute this, what did I tell you? P is capital, so it will give me an error. Even though all of this is completely fine, this P is incorrect. So you can see that it says print is not defined. It is telling you, hey, I cannot understand what print means, and it cannot understand that because P is capital. But the next thing where you fix it, the P is small here. Again, see, it's very simple. I'm just hitting the play button as if I'm playing a song on Spotify or something, and it executes. This is the output. This is the message that we want printed. And as you can see, one tiny mistake here can definitely cause a lot of trouble, especially if you're a beginner. Things like this can get annoying, but stick with it. It really isn't. Now, coming to the comment part of things that we were about to discuss, as I told you, everything to the left of a hashtag executes fine. This entire thing here will execute as it should. It will execute properly like it is a print statement, and everything to the right of it will not execute. As soon as I hit the play button here, you will see that only this message will print, but this message will not. And you can see the color difference, right? Python has this beautiful way of coloring each of its different the way you work with objects, the way you work with different data types. It's so nice to look at. It's very colorful, and you can see that in this particular case, in fact, you can customize all of this too, but in this particular case, all the green stuff is the comment, right? Cool. This entire thing will not execute because why? Because we have everything just to the right of a hashtag. Now, if I remove the hashtag, it will execute. But as you can see, as soon as I put in the hash mark, this becomes a comment. So if I execute this, nothing really happens. And take a look at the multi-line comment example that we just discussed in the theory section. As you can see, we cannot keep doing this all the time, right? No, because you cannot have a chance to sit and write this for 100 continuous lines if you want to do it. So even if I execute it, it's a comment. Python will not even bother to take a look at it. It'll just say, okay, cool. The important part is here. As I told you, if you have to write anything in between triple quotes, right, 3 double quotes, that will become a comment. But then as you can see here, you can see that it will print something for you. So Python is doing something, but it is ignoring it at this moment of time. It will not execute it to a point where you can start getting errors in between anything that you type here. So you can still get away by making use of this as your multi-line comment. But majorly, a lot of us developers actually prefer using hashtags because hashtag and a comment next to it is the most simplest way to go about. But you might have a question saying, okay, so I open 3 double quotes, I write all the comment that I want, but I forget to close it. What happens? The second you forget to close it and it sees the first line of Python code that it should execute, it's going to say, hey, end of file while scanning the literal. It's literally saying you opened these triple quotes here, but where is the closure of triple quotes? And unless you close it, I am not going to execute. That is exactly what Python is telling at this moment of time. Now you can go about closing it. You can come down below, write anything that you want, and it will execute. Now you just saw that, right? I just opened the bracket and I opened the double quote. It automatically closed it for me, and it also closed the bracket. Now if I print this, it will just print whatever it is, the line that I want to print, and it executed fine. But if I remove this, if I remove the double quote here, it's going to give me the same error. Pretty simple, correct? Fantastic. Now that we're done with the comments part, let me minimize all of this. So the next thing that we're going to take a look at are variables in Python. There are many ways through which you're going to be working with variables, even from your most simplest program through your most complex in the case of your Python learning. The best part here about Python is that you do not have to provide the data type. If you've had a chance to work with languages such as C, C++, you might have had a chance to see that people type in int a, float b, char c. You don't have to do any of that. When you're saying that, all you're trying to say is, hey, I will give you a variable. Take a look at the screen. If this was C or C++, you're saying that, hey, I want a variable called a. I want to store the value of 10 in it, and the type of data that I'm going to store is an integer type. You have to specify all of this to the programming language. In the case of Python, no, you just say a equal to 10. Python automatically is intelligent to figure out, oh, okay, so this person has stored in a value of 10. It, of course, is an integer, so I'm going to consider it as an integer. So you do not need to use any of the data types, and this makes the task really simple for us. And all the basic data types, there are many data types, not just 3 that you see on your screen right now. There are many, and we're going to be discussing it down the line in the further Python tutorials. But just for you guys to get started right now, understand these 3. We have integer, we have floating point, and we have strings. In the case of int, you can see that there are multiple values that you can have in an integer. You can have negative values, you can have 0, you can have up to a certain range of values, a very big number. Doubtful that we're going to ever touch that number. But in the case of float, as you can see here, we have a decimal number instead of a whole number. 3.14, 6.45, 10.0. Even though 10.0 is exactly the same as 10, in some cases you might require it to be 10.0 as it is. So there it's a floating point value too. And strings are nothing but a series of characters, right? Sup, what's up, welcome, LWA, Anirudh Rao, anything that you want, you can think about it, you can put it as a string, you can have one entire sentence as a string if that is what you want. Now here, you might have a question saying, okay, so I'm going to have one variable where I want to assign 10 different values to the same variable. Why do you want to do that? I don't know, because you're learning and you want to give it a try. Take a look at your screen. You have a variable and the variable name itself is sample underscore var. Now there are multiple rules through which you're going to have to follow to use your variables. We're going to be discussing that too. But here right now, just take a look at this. I have assigned the value 10 to this particular variable. So all the data that it stores right now is 10. It's an integer. But the very next line, I'm going to say, okay, so now I want you to store my name in this. This becomes a string, correct? This is no longer an integer. But as soon as you print it, which one is going to print? Is it going to print 10? Is it going to print Anirudh Rao? Is it going to print both? You know the answer to this because you just thought about it in your head right now. It will print the latest value that gets assigned. You can have 100 lines of code in between these two lines, and whatever is your first one will not be the latest one. Whatever is literally the last place where you have assigned something, that is the data that's going to go into your variable. Remember this, because down the line, there are chances where you have assigned something to one variable, you want to play around with it. There's a good chance that you'll be confused saying, okay, so why did I get this value? You might have got that value because it's the latest one that's got considered. Now, it's fine. If you have to directly work with integer, you have to directly work with float, it's very good. But can we convert it from one to another? 10.0 is very annoying to look at. So maybe I want to convert 10.0 into 10. Can I do that? Yes, you can. The concept, the term here, it's called as typecasting. Whenever we are saying typecasting and whenever we say explicit typecasting, all we are trying to do is we are forcefully getting Python to look at the data in a different way. Look, var1 is an integer. It has the value 25 stored in it. Simple, 25, nothing else. But then I say, hey, I want another variable, but here I'm going to give you an integer input. This is an integer input, but I want you to forcefully convert it to a floating value. So as soon as you execute this, it's not going to remain as 25. It's going to remain as 25.0. Why? Because you're telling Python saying, hey, convert 25 to float for me. The best part, you can convert it to a string as well. You can give in an integer input, as you can see on your screen right now, and say, I don't want you to consider this as an integer. I want you to consider this as a series of characters. I want you to look at it like if it were alphabet. So do this conversion to string. Very possible to do it. It is very easy. All of this is fine. We know int, float, everything. We know how to typecast as well. But the best part here is that you might have a question saying, okay, so if the data that I've stored in a variable is unknown, I have no clue what is the data that is stored there. How do I figure it out then? Python has beautiful functions and helpers. You know, I always like to call these functions as helpers because that's literally what it is doing. It is helping you reduce your code. I'll show you how. So let's say you have a value, you do not understand what type of data that is stored, and you simply don't want to print it 100 different values to find out what the value is. So what do? Let us discuss this practically in Google Colab. Now, let me open up the section for variables. Fantastic. And as you can see, int a equal to 10. Even if you're, you might have a doubt at this moment saying, okay, you know what? Well, Python will not understand int a equal to 10. I am going to give int a equal to 10 to see what happens. To see what happens, look at your screen right now. It's going to say invalid syntax. It's like, what are you doing? I do not understand this in this particular scenario. It understands what int means because you can convert in typecasting to int also. But here, in this exact context, it does not understand what you're trying to say to Python, even though you might know it because you might have written C or C++ code before. Now, as I told you, right, A equal to 10, this is a beautiful looking integer. B equal to 3.14, again a very nice looking floating point number. C equal to Anirudh Rao, this is all a string. And to print it, it's very simple. If I just want to print my name, I just hit print C and I hit play, and as you can see, it prints whatever that I want to do, and this is a string too. But how do I know that it's a string? That's where the type function comes in. But before we look at the type function, I want you guys to take a look at this. This is the latest value that gets stored. Now it is a value here is 10. If I go about printing it, it is not going to print me 10 unless I actually have a print statement here too. Now what is going to happen is it's going to print this value as 10, and the value is going to change, and it's also going to print Anirudh Rao. So I get 10 and Anirudh Rao now. Okay, typecasting. This is what you guys have been waiting for. So let's just take a look at this. Var1 equal to 25. This is an integer, but then later I've forcefully asked it to convert it, explicitly typecasted it to something called float. And as you can run this, you know this. Var1 is 25. It is giving us 25. Var2 is float, so it's giving us 25.0. But hey, what is this? We asked it to convert to string. This we don't want it as an integer. We said, hey, convert it to a string. But then it has given us 25 only. So are the first value and the third value the same? No, it is not the same here, because even though it's a string, it considers it as alphabet. It looks at it as your literally English writing alphabet rather than your mathematical number, which is 25. And to convert it and to find out if that is the case, we have this function here called the type function. This 3 lines of code is the same that we saw, correct? Now, instead of just printing var1, just add in this little function there called type function. Print type of var1. So all we're trying to do is print the type. Instead of printing the value of var1, var2, var3, we're saying print me the type of the value that you have stored in var1, var2, var3. And as soon as I run this, it's going to say int, float, and string. Why? Because you can see var1 is an integer, var2 is floating, var3 is string. It says that, hey, this first one belongs to the class of integers, second one belongs to the class of floating numbers, the third one belongs to the class of string values. How easy is this? Now, this is very fast paced, I can understand that, but this is literally the most basic stuff. And if I slow it down even more, I assure you guys that you're gonna get bored, because I'm sure that you guys are finding it easy. And if you're finding it easy, head to a comment section right now and leave me a comment to find out what it is that if there is anything more that you want to learn, and if anything here might have confused you. I'll be really happy to help all of you out in the comments below. Fantastic. Comments done, variables done. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is conditional statements. Conditional statements are really nice to work with. It's fun to work with. I'm going to give you fantastic examples here. The first thing that I want to talk to you guys is whenever you use these statements, if, else, and everything, it's a block statement. So never forget the indentation part of it. Here's an example. If you and your friends are going out and if you say, hey, if I eat a biryani, I'm going to need an ice cream later because we do not get up from having a scrumptious lunch or dinner without dessert. Let's be honest with each other. So you say, if I eat a biryani, I want ice cream. Else, if we do not eat a biryani, I want to just eat pani puri and go home. Very simple statement, right? In the case of Python, here's an example. Here we have a value of 100 that is in the variable x. We have a value of 20 in the variable y. We are asking a question to Python. We are asking, hey, if y is less than x, print me a message saying that it is correct. Now, 20 is less than 100, correct? So what do you think is going to happen? It's going to print this particular piece of code, but there are two things here you should look at, which is very important for you guys to understand. One is the colon, as you can see on your screen right now. This particular colon is very important. Whenever you add a colon, you're telling Python that everything that is going to come below the colon, everything that gets indented is a part of that particular statement. Now, instead of one print statement, if I had 100 print statements which are indented to the right and it is still below that particular colon and it is indented, it means that all those statements are a part of that if statement. So do not forget colon, do not forget indentation. Take a look at this example. We are at the Pani Puri example now. So x is 100, y is 20. Everything until the first 4 lines is exactly the same thing. So I'll tell you what happens. If y is less than x, it's going to print a message saying this. But it is not going to do anything else unless you tell what happens if y is greater than y. So we say, hey, if the value of y that I've given to you is greater than x, do not worry, print me another message that says, y is greater than x. That's it. That is simple. You don't have to have another case. You don't have to have another clause. You don't have to write another 10 lines of code. You just add an else block, you add a piece of code, and you are good to go. Okay, so we saw the if part, we saw the biryani part, we saw the ice cream part, and we saw the pani puri part. Now let's take a look at what happens if we want another choice here. So you'll say, hey, if I eat biryani, I'm going to need an ice cream later. Else if, that's the important keyword that I've highlighted here. Else if we eat pani puri, we're going to have to go out and get some chai. Now, regardless, I know all of you all are going to be drinking a lot of chai probably while watching this video. So if you are, just understand that even I just had my cup of tea just before starting the recording now. So here, you can see the important statement here. If I eat the biryani, I need an ice cream later. Else, if we eat pani puri, I'm going to need something. So this is, you're asking a question saying, else if we do this, if we eat pani puri, I'm going to want something else as well. Or if I don't want an ice cream, I don't want a biryani, I don't want pani puri, I don't want chai, let's just go home and chill. Something like that. Now, what does it look like in the case of Python? Again, all the first 4 lines are exactly the same thing, but here instead of else, instead of just saying if that doesn't happen, do this, I'm going to give it another condition to check. Else if is combined into one word in Python. It's very simple. It's called as elif. ELIF is short for else if. Now here, what we're trying to say is if y is less than x, good, print me this message. But else if y is equal to x, print me this. You're getting the point here, right? We're not just adding an else and printing for every other condition. We're saying, hey, do one more check for me. Check if y is equal to x rather than checking if y is greater than x. Pretty simple, right? Fantastic. Now I think it's high time we take a look at all of this practically as well. So let me quickly open up the conditional statements block here and let's get started. The first part is the if statement, and you can see that we have the indentation on your screen. As you can see, x is 100, y is 20. If y is less than x, print this statement for us. Now let's remove the indentation first so I can show you the error that you're going to get. Printing it, you're going to get an error right now. It says expected an indented block. It's telling, hey, you should indent this. You haven't. So let me quickly click on the code, hit the tab button, indent it, move it to the right, and let me hit play again. Now, when I hit play again, the logic is correct. The logic says y is less than x, and it is true. So it's going to print me this. If this is enough, why do we even require the else block? Now I'm going to show you why we're going to require it. I'm going to change the logic here. Instead of y less than x, I'm going to give y greater than x. Now it's 20. 20 is not greater than 100, correct? If we print this, you think that it will give you an error, but it will actually give you nothing. It's not going to print anything on your screen because you haven't told Python what to do if y is greater than x. If y is less than x, it will happily print it because this becomes correct. Only if this is correct, it will execute this block. If this is not correct, it's just going to skip and go, because right now it didn't print you an output because it just skipped and went ahead and it didn't find anything else to print. So we'll fix that in the if else block. That is why we have the beautiful else block here. X equal to 100, y equal to 20. If y is less than x, print me this, else print me this. See, here instead of us getting a blank output, I'm specifically telling it, if there is anything else apart from this that is happening, do not execute this, execute this particular block of statement. Now I'll execute this. It is still going to print the first statement here. Why? Because x is 100, y is 20. Now I'm going to change that. I'm going to make y 200. 200 is greater than 100. So what will happen to this? This will not execute and this will execute. So Python will skip the entire execution. Even if you have 10 print statements that are indented, it will not execute it. Now let me run this. And as you can see, it is saying that, hey, x is less than y, because this part, this block of the code got executed. How cool is this? Correct? Next, the elif operation or the else if operation that we're going to take a look at. Look at this, x is 100, y is 100. Now, if I'm asking it saying, hey, if this is less than that, print this. All of you all are very quick at understanding this, I know. So this will not execute. Now I'm going to give it another condition. I'm not just saying else, I'm saying else if y is equal to x, print this condition. So what's going to happen right now? As soon as I execute this, x and y are the same value. They are, correct? But what if y is less than x? I'm going to make that as 10 right now. This is not going to print, only this is going to print. Take a look at that. Y is less than x. Now, ladies and gentlemen, while I'm showing you this, you can have the same notebook open in your next tab, in your next browser, whatever it is. You can execute it on your own and pause the video wherever you find it necessary for you guys to actually practice one or two statements on your own. Doing this right now will be very important, very foundational, because later later during your learning, if your foundations right now are very strong, you do not have to bother to look at that all again to learn your fundamentals again and again for the next 10, 20, 30 years that you're going to be using Python. So take a second to actually practice all that, because to practice the Python code, you're going to need something interesting. You're going to need something not boring. And that is exactly what we'll take a look at right now, is operators in Python. Python has many operators through which we're gonna be working with. I'm gonna show you most of these practically right now without boring you, without any more theory. But understand this at this moment, that there are multiple types of operators and you can perform multiple operations in Python. There's a difference between an operator and an operation, and I'm going to show you all of this practically. So let's quickly get back to Google Colab. Here, we are at the part where we're going to be discussing operators. Fantastic. And there are 7 types of operators. We have arithmetic, assignment, bitwise, all the way to identity, membership, comparison. And in fact, there are multiple subdivisions in each of these as well. At first, we're going to take a look at arithmetic operators now. In the case of arithmetic operators, as the name itself suggests, arithmetic talks about all the mathematical stuff that you can go about doing here. So it's very simple and it's very straightforward. I have 2 variables. I've put the value of a as 100, b as 20. Instead of x and y, we have taken a and b. Good. I'm going to hit play. Nothing happens because I have not asked it to print me anything. But take a look at the next here. Here, I'm trying to print the addition, right? I'm doing multiple operations. Addition is an operation and the plus symbol is the operator. Subtraction is the operation that I want to perform, and minus or negative symbol is the actual operator that I'm going to use. Here, take a look at multiplication. Whenever we write in our books, whenever we have studied multiplication in school, we have never used the asterisk symbol. This is the asterisk symbol. If you don't know where the asterisk is, just hit shift and 8 on your keyboard. That's going to bring you to the asterisk key. If you type this AXB, it will not understand what x is, because it will think that x is a variable. It will not understand that x is a multiplier here. So instead of that, you have to use the multiplier value. And then we have something called regular division. Regular division is where you divide. 10 by 5 is what? 10 divided by 5. Give me the answer. Simple, right? You know what it is. Now, there are 2 other things. Modulus and floor division. We're going to take a look at this after we see the output. So let me hit play. As soon as I hit play, a plus b is what? 100 plus 20, 120. 100 minus 20, 80. Very simple. 100 into 20 multiplied. Basically, 100 multiplied 20 times is going to give us 2000. Simple. 100 divided by 20 is 5.0. It's okay. 5.0 will work for now. Some of you all might be saying, oh, it's floating point value. We have given integers. It's okay. But 100 by 20, even if you open your calculator and put it, it's going to give you 5, correct? Take a look at modulus. Modulus is the percentage symbol. Now you might be wondering, why do we even need the percentage symbol? But as you can see here, with the percentage symbol, instead of regular division gives us the answer as what? It gives us the quotient. But I don't want the quotient. I want the remainder here. So remainder between 100 and 20. If you divide 100 by 20, 20 fits into 100 completely. So the remainder is 0. We all know this. So it's going to give you a simple output as 0. And then there's something called floor division. Floor division is especially important when you have floating point numbers where you want to get rid of that point. So if you have something called 3.567, you want to remove the point and just have 3, you're going to require floor division. So I know that you might be saying, hey, show me one more example for modulus, show me one more example for floor division. So let's take a look at exactly that. Consider the value x as 10. Consider the value y as 3. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do the modulus right now. Can you tell me what the value is even before I execute? It's not going to be 0. I can tell you that. Why? Because you cannot fit 3 equally into 10, right? In the 3 table, 3 ones are 3, 3 twos are 6, 3 threes are 9. There is no 10 there directly. So what happens? So 3 threes are 9. 3 multiplied with 3 gives you just 9, but it does not give you 10. So what is the remainder there? The remainder there is 1. So this operation will give you 1. The floor division, do 10 by 3 in your calculator quickly, because you're going to get 3.33333. It's going to be an infinitely long number that you're going to get, which will never end, right? 3.33333. It's going to go on and on and on. The answer only says 3. Where did everything from the right side of the point go? We removed it because we just told Python to say, hey, regardless of whatever value is there after the floating point, throw all of that value out and give me the integer part of the value and floor it down. There's something called floor and there's something called ceiling, which is very simple for you guys to understand. Ceiling will, instead of 3.3, if you use ceiling, it's going to give you 4. But here I've used floor division. Floor division is me telling it to make sure, let me just close this. Oh, there's a simple typo in the case of the comment, but it's okay. Comments, it's absolutely fine to have a typo. You know, it doesn't really hurt Python in any way, and it'll just be a small annoying thing for us to look at. So done. This is very simply the arithmetic operators that we need to take a look at. What's the next one? The next one is assignment operators. This is going to be the most easiest one for you because we have been using assignment operators right since the first demo that you guys have seen. A equal to 10. What are you saying? You're saying to Python that, hey, I want to assign the value 10 to the variable A. You're assigning 10 to A. That is literally the assignment operator, the equal to sign. So as soon as I execute this, nothing is going to happen because I'm not asking it to print anything. But take a look at the next statement here. A equal to A plus 5. It is going to have the value of A as 10 right now. And all I'm trying to say is take the value of 10, add it 5. Make it 15 and print it out. So as soon as I print it, it's going to give me the value 15. Why? 10 plus 5. Here, instead of 8, it becomes 10. Simple. But what will this statement print? I want you guys to give me an answer right now. Instead of saying b equal to b plus 5, I have skipped it and I've added a short form here, right? This is a short form. So what's the output going to be? Is it going to give me an error? There's a good chance it might be an error, but actually no. B plus equal to 5 literally is the exact same thing as b equal to b plus 5. Plus equal to just is a shortcut that you guys can go about using. Now let me give you one more example. C equal to 30. Okay, very simple. Now what I want to do is I want to multiply 10 to this C. So generally we would be doing this, correct? C equal to C multiplied by 10. That's going to give us what? 300. But what if I don't want to write this entire line of code? I just want the exact same thing, but in a shorter form. I want to save one character because that's going to save us a ton of time. While writing a big program, yes, while you're a beginner, this can actually confuse you. So make sure that you're using this wisely. I'm going to print it. It's going to give me the value 300. Why? Because as soon as it sees C equal to 30, I'm telling it, hey, multiply this value, whatever value is given here, multiply it and store it in the same variable C and print me the output, which is simple, 300. Fantastic. So arithmetic done, assignment done. The next thing is something called bitwise operators. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you about bitwise operators right now because all of these things in bitwise we talk about in binary. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the decimal system. Just like decimal, you have something called hexadecimal. You have something called binary. Your computer understands only binary, even though right now it seems to understand all the English because that's because of Python. Now, binary and binary OR. If you ever have studied about logic gates in your school or in your college, you might know what all of these mean. If you give two inputs and if both the inputs are 1, your output is going to be 1 in the case of binary AND. If it's 0, it's going to be 0. If it's 0, 1, it's not going to work. Both of the values have to be this and that must be true for your binary AND to work. For binary OR, 1, 0, 0, 1, it will still give you the output to be as 1. XOR is very nice. XOR is a gate where if you give both zeros, it's going to give you 0. If you give both ones, it's going to give you 0. But if you have two inputs which are just different to each other, 0 1 or 1 0, it's going to give you a 1. So if both of your outputs are different to each other, this will give you a positive output. Now it's okay. I understand that some of you all are really confused right now. You probably are not figuring out what I'm saying. You might not know what binary left shift or ones complement is. Do not worry. For your majority of usage, you will not be using any of these concepts when you're working with it, but it's a foundational basic concept that you guys have to know. And I'm going to make another entirely different episode of Learn with Anirudh where we're going to discuss how you can work with binary numbers, how easy it is for Python to understand this, and how easy is it for you to understand this. So for now, just understand that these are the various operators, and ones complement and binary left shift, all we're trying to do is we're messing with the binary stuff there to give us an output. So in binary, each of it is considered as a bit. When you start messing around and playing around with this bit, if you just change 1 into 0 or 0 into 1, your entire value will change. It'll absolutely change. So I don't want to add more confusion to you. That's the reason I want to take a separate chance to convey this particular concept. Now, the next thing is the comparison operator. Comparison operator is something that we use in real life. It's something our brain already understands. And in the case of getting Python to understand, here is how we can compare a lot of things. We have greater than, we have less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, all the basic stuff that we have already learned in mathematics. Now, let me explain a very simple example for you guys. Think of it like asking a question to Python. Instead of having the question saying if this is equal to that, print me something, we'll simplify it even more. This is a question I'm asking to Python. Is 100 greater than 10? What do you think? It is correct. So it's true. As soon as I print it, it's going to say yes, 100 is greater than 10. But is 20 greater than 10? No. So it's going to say false. Here's another very nice question that I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say, is 20 greater than 20? No, it's not, because it's exactly the same value out there, correct? Is 20.1 greater than 20? Yes, it's true, because it's a floating point value. But here, you have to be very careful when you're usually using floating point and your decimal as well. Is 3.0 greater than 3? No, it's not, correct? Because 3.0 and 3 in the mathematical sense mean the exact same thing. If you want it to be slightly bigger, now it's going to say it's true. Cool. Here is another tricky one. Here is where it might get a little confusing for all of you all. Don't worry, I'm going to simplify this. I've given two strings, my name with A capital, my name with A in a small letter. I'm asking, is Anirudh with capital A greater than Anirudh with smaller a? It's going to say false. Now, how do you make sense of this? What is it trying to tell you? Take a look at the next one. I have Anirudh with capital A less than. I'm asking a question saying, is this less than that? And as soon as I print it, it's going to say true. So what is the nonsense that's going on here? Well, it's actually not nonsense. It's very simple. We have something called as ASCII values. ASCII values are what your computer uses to understand A, B, C, D, X, Y, Z, plus, minus, be it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So to get itself some meaning, it uses a standard. This standard is called as ASCII. And each of these characters that you see here actually is a number that it sees in the backend. So whenever you see capital A, what it sees is 65. It's very simple for you to understand. What you see letters, it sees as numbers. So all you're trying to ask is saying, hey, is 65 greater than or less than 97? Because 97 is the value for small a, 65 is the value for capital A. So why do we require two different things? Capital A, small a, big deal, all the same thing, correct? No, Python is a case-sensitive programming language, ladies and gentlemen, because capital A and small a has absolutely different meaning. So how does Python understand that different meaning? Because it uses ASCII values to figure that out. Simple, right? Now let's take a look at one or two examples to actually work with these operators that we're taking a look at. I have said x equal to 10. Simple, you understand what this line means. Take a look at this line. I've asked it a question saying, is x less than or equal to x multiplied by 3? Take a look at x multiplied by 3 first. What is x? 10. What happens when you multiply it by 3? It becomes 30. So is x less than or equal to 30? The answer is yes, it is. It becomes correct. It becomes true. The next thing is x is equal to 10 and I'm saying, is x less than or equal to x? What do you think? Yes, it's true, because even though x is not less than x, x is equal to x. That's the reason why we have used less than or equal to. Now, this is the fun part. 10 equal to 10. We are asking a question saying, hey, is 10 equal to 10? What's the output going to be? It's not going to be true. It's going to be false, because the first 10 that it is seeing is an arithmetic number. It's a mathematical number. But this one, you can see I have used single quotes, or I can use double quotes also, is me telling that this is a string. This is not a number, but this is a set of characters. So 10 as an arithmetic value is not equal to 10 as characters, right? Now, if you just open your notebook and write 100 rupees, it doesn't become the actual 100 rupee note. It just is 100 rupee. Similar concept here as well. But then mathematical comparison is always going to be true. 3 equal to 3. Yes, it is true, because 3 and 3.0 are exactly the same thing. We already checked this out, so make sure to remember this. And then 3 not equal to 3. This operator that you see, the exclamation and equal to, it is simple. It's us asking Python saying, is it not equal to that? Is 3 not equal to 3.0? No, it is equal. So what's the answer? It should be false. Why? Because it's equal. If you want it to be true, let's just change the value to be 34. Now, is 3 equal to 34? No, 3 is not equal to 34. So this entire statement becomes true. True. Simple. Fantastic. Now that we're done with comparison operators, we can take a look at identity operators next. Identity operators are very, very simple. I have just two examples to show you guys. There are two operators here. We have something called as the is operator, something called as the is not operator. It's literally like you speaking in English language. I'm going to explain. Look, x equal to 100, y equal to 100. Cool. We have two variables. We have an if block here. And all we are trying to say is if x is y, as in if both of these values, both of these variables point to the same object, or if it's the same thing, just say that it's the same object that it's pointing to, else there are different objects there. If you have the value of 100 stored, in the case of Python, what happens is that Python is intelligent enough. If you have multiple variables to have the same number that you're storing, int, 100 or anything else, since Python is a object-oriented language, it's going to bring all the other data and point it to the same thing. So instead of you clicking 10 different photos and editing it 10 different times and storing 100 different photos in your computer, you can just have one photo, edit it, and if you have something like Photoshop, you can even reverse all the edits and it'll just be one file that you will be messing around with. Similarly here, it'll only be one object that it's going to be messing around with. So as soon as I hit the play button, it's going to say, hey, both the variables point to the same object. Now what if we change it to 101? As soon as we change it to 101, you can see that now it cannot say that it's the same thing, because this is a different value stored in this variable. This is a different value stored in this variable. So different objects. Now I'm going to make it back to 100, because when you guys get this sheet, you guys get this notebook, you guys can mess around with it, work with it on your own. Cool. So the next one, x equal to 100, y equal to 30. If x is y, again, all you're trying to do is print if it's the same or not. So what is the output that we're going to get? Is it going to be the same? It's going to be different. It's going to be different, because 30 and 100 are different. But you might have one more question here. Take a look at this one. The next one is very fascinating and simple at the same time. X equal to 500. Cool. We understand this. Instead of us trying to compare the values here, we're just trying to compare the objects here, correct? But here you can also compare the type of the object. 500 is what? 500 is an integer. So if I'm saying if the type of x is an integer, see, it's literally the English that I'm speaking, and it's the same thing that you have to type in Python. If the type of x is an integer, print that it is an integer. Else, print that it is not an integer. I'm going to execute this. It's going to say it's an integer. Why? Because this is int. Now, what if I just add 0.0565 something? Is it an integer now? So no, it's not. This entire thing is not going to run. It gives me false. Nice, right? Very simple at the same time. And I'm sure all of you all are picking up on everything that we're discussing right now. If you have any doubts anywhere, head to the comment section right away. Pause it, put the comment down. I'm going to be really excited to help you out there too. Any help you need, head to the comment section. Fantastic. The next thing we're going to take a look at is the membership operators. Membership operators are really fun to work with. Instead of is and, what is the other thing that we took a look at? Remember it. If you don't, it's is and is not. Instead of is and is not, the word we're going to use is in and not in. So what are we going to do? Let me explain it with the help of an example for you guys. X equal to 10, Y equal to 20, and we have a list. Yes, I know that you might not know what a list is, what a tuple is, what a dictionary is. Do not worry. We're going to have a separate video talking to you guys about all the data types in Python, especially these items are very, very important. But just now understand that instead of just having one variable with one value, we have a list of data that gets stored into something. In your older programming languages like C or C++, you might call it as an array. Here we don't call it as an array, we call it as a list, we call it as a set, we call it as a tuple, we call it as a dictionary. It's all different things, and I didn't want to confuse you guys in this particular tutorial. So in the very next Python episode that we're going to do, we're going to be discussing all of that in detail. I'm going to execute this, nothing happens because I've not asked it to print anything. Here is where the entire logic of the membership operators. It's again, just like English language. If X is in the list of items, print that it is there, else it is not there. So what is the value of X? X is 10. Is 10 present in this list? You can see that Collabs has already highlighted it for me. If I just select this, it figures it out and it highlights all the other 10s that are present there. So all I'm asking Python is, hey, is this 10 present in this list? If it is there, print me a message saying it is there, else print me a message saying it's not there. Take a look at Y. Y is 20. Is 20 present in this list? No, it's only 1, 2, 10 and 5. We don't have 20 here. So print me a message that it is not there, or print me a message that it is there. As soon as you hit play button, it's going to say X is present in the list, Y is not present in the list. That's correct. 10 is present here, but 20 is not present here. So make sure that you guys are taking a note of this. Make sure you guys are putting in your own values here. Instead of 10 and 20, put whatever value it is that you want to do, mess around with it and practice this. Because at the end of the day, all these operators that we just took a look at, right? Be it assignment, arithmetic, bitwise, comparison, membership, identity, all of these are very, very simple to work with, and time again you will not have to come back to the tutorial to see how it works exactly, because it's the very basic of Python. If you clear with all of these, then boom, you're done. With that, we've completed the particular operators section in Python. The next thing, the last couple of statements that we're going to take a look at are something called looping statements. Looping statements, I assure you, you have already heard of this, right? For loop, while loop, and all of that. So how does these work, and what are the different types of loops you have in Python? For now, understand that in Python, there are two different primary loops. There are something called while loops. There are something called for loops. So let's just take a look at while loop first. And as always, let's not just directly look at the program. Let's talk a little bit about a story. In while loop, you have used the word while talking how many different times? See, I just used the word here. It's very simple. While we still have daylight, let us complete the trek. So you're saying, hey, while we have something, while we still have daylight, let's complete a trek. So you're saying while I have this. I'm going to repeat that again. So can you find out something about the word daylight? What is the word daylight adding meaning to the word while? And you're saying that once this happens, this is like a condition. You're saying, let's do this. One more example. While we are waiting for him, let's get some chai. Yes, you would have done this. I'm pretty sure. Chalo bhai ek chai peete. That is a very common thing that you would have said. So while you're waiting for someone, this is the action that you're trying to take, right? To drink some chai. Finally, you want to do this. But to do this, what condition is there? The condition right now is that you're waiting for someone, and while you're waiting, you want to sip a nice cup of chai. Bangalore's weather today, if you guys are in Bangalore, it's proper chai weather from morning to night and to the next morning as well. Cool. So here, I'm going to simplify it down now. Everything in the red color is something that has to do with something in green color. So what is happening here? While we have daylight, let's complete the trek. While we are waiting, let's get some chai. So whatever in the red is a condition that you have to follow, and based on that condition, you want to do something. While I am hungry, I'm going to eat some biryani. While I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink some water. In fact, I'm thirsty right now, so let me quickly drink some water. See, I've been speaking non-stop for a long time now. So while I've been thirsty, I drank some water. Cool. So what does it look like when you take a look at this practically? Let's go back directly to Colab and let's discuss these last couple of statements really quickly. Okay, so take a look at the while loop that's present on your screen. We have x is equal to 0 and the condition, you remember the red part? This is the red part. I'm saying, hey, while x is less than 100, you keep printing me the value of x. Okay, x is 0 and if you're saying print it until it's less than 100, it's forever going to be 0. So it'll be an infinite loop. It'll never ever ever end. So to make sure that doesn't happen, all you're going to say is for every time you execute it once, increase the value of x by 10. So the first time it executes this, it's going to print 0. The next time it's going to execute this, it's going to add 10. The next time it's going to add another 10, another 10, another 10. Finally, when it becomes 100, it'll ask the same question. Is 100 less than 100? No. So it's going to come out of this loop and it's going to stop printing. As soon as I run this, take a look at the 0. Every single time it loops around, it is basically trying to add 10 to it and go up to 90. As soon as it comes to 100, if you're wondering why 100 is not printed, just ask yourself this question. Is 100 less than 100? No. So if it is not there, everything below that from whenever the condition fails will never execute. But as I just told you, what happens if you do not provide this extra line? What if you do not change the value while you go about doing it? Now I'm going to execute this and take a look at what happens. The concept here is called as an infinite loop. It's very beautiful to look at. It's nonsensically going to keep printing zeros forever and ever and ever, and it is not going to stop. Right now, I'll just forcefully stop it. This is me interrupting it. In just the span of 5-6 seconds that it executed, it literally gave me so many zeros. Look at this. I'm scrolling again, going all the way. We have more. It was gonna do that thing infinitely unless I had stopped it manually. Look, we're still going. 5,000 times. Interesting, right? So if you do not stop it, it's going to be very annoying. So make sure you never forget this condition. There are 3 things you have to remember in a while loop. First of all, the while keyword and the semi and the colon, then the indentation. What is the action that you want to do? While there is sunlight, let's complete the trek. So this is the actual trek part that you're trying to do. And in the trek part, you just don't want to randomly go somewhere. You want to go in a particular direction. So for you to give direction to Python, you're going to say, hey, just do this so that, there is an end to your never ending madness, as you can see on your screen right now. Now that's fantastic. So let's quickly go back to Colab and let's take a look at for loop. For loop is going to be the last programmatical concept we're going to be discussing in this Python tutorial. So for loop is, again, you've used something in your real life. Here you will know that, hey, I have to do something that many number of times. You might be saying right now, saying, hey, I should lift weights 3 times a week for bulking up, to get some muscle, to impress people around, to impress yourself first of all. So what is happening right now here? The number of times you're very clear saying I have to lift weights 3 times a week, and some of you all legends out there, you might be lifting for all 6 or 7 days of the week. If you are, send me some pictures or send me your Instagram. I'd love to follow you guys and connect with you apart from being your mentor here as well. So here it's very, very simple. So all we're trying to do is understand how to get this concept into Python. To get this concept into Python, there are 3 different things that you're going to need. One is the for keyword, one is the iteration variable, as in this is a variable that's going to keep a track of how many times something happens. You remember our iteration variable in the while loop? Because without that variable, you cannot keep a track. Similarly, in for loop also, we're going to have an iteration variable and we have something called as a range function. We're going to take a look at that as well. Best part is there are many things you can do in the while loop and in the for loop as well. So in the while loop, we took a look at 2 or 3 simple examples. Take a look at it here in the for loop. You can iterate through many different strings. You can iterate through every single character of a string. You can have something called break statements. You can have something called continue statements. So what is it that we're going to understand here? So let's take a look at more food, of course. I am hungry, and even if you are, just bring yourself a bowl of popcorn or something and just have fun along with me. Take a look at the very simple piece of code that you have. Food is biryani, pani puri and vada pav. Very nice. I will eat all three right now. Basically, all we're trying to do is we have a list of elements, pani puri, biryani, and vada pav. And all I'm saying is for X in food. So every time you run through the loop, each of the X basically picks up one of these and it keeps going from left to right printed. So the output is going to be biryani, pani puri, and vada pav printed one line after another. We're going to check it out practically. Don't worry. Now take a look at this. For X in biryani, print X. Now here it's not a list of items. So what is it going to print? If you know the answer right now, pause and head to the comment section. If you do not, I'm going to show it to you practically. But understand that biryani, as soon as take a look at this word here. This is a word because it is a set of characters. BIRIYANI. It's a set of characters, correct? So instead of it moving through the entire word, Python is going to move through every single character. So it's going to give you BIRIYANI. It's going to separate each character and it's going to traverse. It's going to iterate. Those are the keywords, traversing and iteration. It's going to move through each of the characters and it's going to give you an output that you can look at. Fantastic. But there are two important statements that you guys have to understand, which sometimes people find it very, very confusing, even experienced programmers. What if you have to print some things in your loop, but you want to skip some other things? What do we say? Take a look at this. We have biryani, pani puri, vada pav, pizza, and pasta. Ooh, pizza and pasta. I bet that makes more of us hungry here. Cool. So here I have a simple condition. I want to say, hey, I want you to print biryani. I want you to print pani puri. I want you to print vada pav. But anything to the right of vada pav, you might have 100 more elements in the list. Skip that, break the loop at vada pav. For X in food, print X. The first three lines we already know, but take a look at the fourth and the fifth line. All I'm trying to say is if your iteration variable sees vada pav, as soon as it sees vada pav, print vada pav, and after vada pav, just kick everything out. So it will just print biryani, pani puri, vada pav, pizza, pasta, boom, get out of the way. We are all desis, we like desi food, correct? No offense if you love Italian food, I absolutely adore Italian food too. So what happens exactly while executing? While executing, it understands that everything after this condition, it should just break the loop completely. So even if you have a million elements after that, all of those million elements to the right of this particular element that you have chosen will get broken. The loop gets broken and your Python parser comes out of the loop and starts executing whatever other code you have there. We just took a look at the break statement here. What important thing you have to understand is that break has to be indentation has to be followed here as well, because you're saying if this happens, do this. So whenever you're giving this a statement to Python like this break statement is a part of this if statement. Hence you're going to need the colon. Hence you're going to need the break statement with what? With indentation as well. Let's take a look at another statement which is called the continue statement. What if I don't want pizza, as people would call it, right? So what if we don't want pizza, and what if we want everything else apart from pizza? I want biryani, I want pani puri, I want vada pav, I want pasta also. But if I just use the break statement, both of these will go out. I don't want both of them to go out. I just want pizza to go out. In that case, to just skip pizza and have pasta, we are going to take a look at something called the continue statement, as you can see on your screen right now. Here, instead of break, I've said continue. So all I'm trying to say is, while running through the loop, get to biryani, get to pani puri, get to vada pav. As soon as you see pizza, skip it. Skip everything that says pizza. Do not give me pizza. But if there is anything else apart from that, you can give me that too. So you will have everything printed in the same order without pizza. Why? Because we have used continue there. Continue is basically us trying to skip only this element instead of skipping everything after that. So let's quickly head back to Colab and let's take a look at this practically. The first for loop example, right? Food, pani puri, biryani, vada pav. For X in food, printed. So we saw how we can get each of these elements printed out, right? This is a list. Each element of the list is being printed in a simple fashion. Cool, nice. Take a look at the next thing. I told you that a string is a series of characters, right? Each of this is a single character on its own. So as soon as I print it, you might be surprised at the output, but look at this. You have each single character that makes up this entire string printed. Very nice. But what happens when we take a look at the break and the continue statement? Let's look at the break statement first. As soon as I print this, you can see, even though there is pizza and pasta here, we skipped everything after vada pav. So we only have everything until vada pav. So when you say if x is equal to this, we're not skipping this. We're skipping everything after that. So you'll be including this as well. So if you want to skip vada pav, you're going to be, what are you going to be entering here if you want to skip vada pav? You're going to be entering pani puri. Simple. Now, you can see that pizza, pasta, and you can have one more food here. Just name your favorite food. Okay, let's just say soup. This is soup weather right now in Bangalore, right? So I'm going to have soup. I'm going to copy this for later. Even though I have soup here, it's not going to execute because anything to the right of vada pav gets skipped. This is the break statement. We're breaking the entire loop. And to see if you've broken the entire loop, you can have a print statement away from the loop saying we have broken the loop. See, we have broken the loop. Pretty simple, right? As soon as it comes to break, it's not going to go back again to execute. It's just going to break it out. But here in the case of continue statement, I'm going to change this quickly. I'm going to add soup here. So this is our input list. And instead of using break, we've just used the word continue here. As soon as I run this, we're going to have everything printed here. Biryani, pani puri, vada pav, and no pizza. Why? Because we are probably all lifting weights 6 times a week and everything gets printed else, right? Look at this. We have everything until vada pav. Beautiful. Pizza is skipped. Pasta and soup are printed. So in continue, we are just saying avoid this, but continue the loop. Do not break the loop right there and print everything else there too, right? Nice. So ladies and gentlemen, with this, I assured you at the beginning of this video to tell you that Python is very simple to use, very easy, and I've mentioned it in my introduction to Python video as well. And with this very short demonstration, we could cover a ton of different things, right? Look at this. Let me zoom out a little. We understood Python's case sensitivity. We understood how we can work with comments, how to work with variables, the various conditional statements like if, else, else if. We took a look at various operations, arithmetic operations, membership operations, identity operations, and more. We took a look at looping statements, and we basically understood all the basic concepts that's required for you guys to start writing Python code. Correct? So now that we've had a chance to understand all of this, I'm going to give you 4 very simple assignments, very simple homeworks and quiz questions that I want you guys to answer. And here you go. I want you guys to write 4 programs, and each of these programs, you can definitely do all these programs with everything you have learned in this particular tutorial. The first program is to find out if a number is odd or even. I'm going to give you a small hint. You can actually use the conditional statement if else to find out if the number is odd or even. You can use loops as well for it. And look at the second program to count the number of vowels in a string. We know what the vowels are: A, E, I, O, U. So if you have that, print a statement saying there are vowels present first of all. Secondly, I have not asked you to print if there are vowels or not. I've asked you to print the number of vowels. So use the loops to count how many vowels are there and print it out. It's a very simple program. I assure you that all of you all can do it. The third program says calculate the sum of digits of an integer. I'm going to give you an example. If I say 35, what is the sum of 3 and 5? 8. Simple, correct? Now what if I tell 350? 350 is still 8 because 3 plus 5 plus 0 is still 8, correct? What if I give you an example called 911? If you add 911, what are you going to get? I'm going to tell you the final answer is 2. And you might be wondering, wait, what? 9 plus 1 plus 1 is 11. But 11 also can be added as 1 plus 1. That makes it 2. So overall answer for 911 is 2. So make sure that you guys sum up all the digits and give me one answer here. And it should work for any integer value that you provide to it. And the fourth program basically is to find out if it's a palindrome or not. Now, if you do not know what a palindrome is basically when you reverse it, it should be the same thing. Now, 121, 121, no matter which side you write it from, it still is going to be 121. Now, if I tell you 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. If you reverse it, it still is the same thing. There are many words in the English dictionary as well where it's a palindrome. You reverse it, it is exactly the same thing. Amazing, isn't it? So I want you to write a simple program to put in a number. I want you guys to type a number, and if that number is a palindrome, as I just told you, if you reverse it, it should work. If it is, print saying it's a palindrome. If it is not, print saying it's not a palindrome. Now, of course, you can use a little bit of help from Google, but before you do that, try to find out the heart of the logic. I can assure all of you all that at this moment of time, you all can write any complex syntax that is ever present in Python. You will understand every bit of it right now. But the best part here is for the logic building is where all your skill requires. So instead of just Googling it out, finding an answer and copy pasting it, try to find out how you can get Python to understand how it can see a vowel. What is the logic that differs a vowel and a consonant? What is the logic where you sum up all the numbers? Find that logic out on your own, figure it out. If you do not understand it, hit the comment section. I'm going to give you an easy way to figure all of these out. So if you guys work on these programs, let me know. I'll be more than happy to discuss this with all of you all. And in the further episodes of Learn with Anirudh, we're going to take a look at all of these very, very important questions. We're going to pick up 10 or 20 important Python questions like this, which are super common in all your placement level questions and all of that. So we're going to discuss those important questions in the next coming episodes as well. So let us quickly conclude this beautiful episode of Learn with Anirudh. So I hope if you guys have followed through until here, thank you so much for watching. With this, I really hope I've had a chance to earn your subscription. But remember these things, ladies and gentlemen. The first thing is we covered a lot of important concepts, a lot of foundational concepts. If you forget any of these, it is okay. The company that you'll be working for or at your own home, whatever it is that you're doing, you have internet 24/7. So in programming, it is very simple. If you do not know something, you have Google to answer. So programmers are not expected to know the thorough in and out every single word that's out there, because if that is the case, a website like Stack Overflow would never exist. If you go to Stack Overflow and if you type in even the most simplest questions, it will give you thorough answers to how it works, how those things happen. So in that case, you have to understand that there are other programmers, even advanced programmers, who might forget something like a membership operator, something like the identity operator. We might forget how it's used or what it does in an advanced fashion. So yes, even we Google it, we figure it out. There is nothing wrong in that. If you're ever in a situation where you think that, oh no, programming is not for me, I am forgetting a lot of things, it's okay. Just find out the logic. Just try to remember all these to the best of your abilities. Even if you forget, no programmer in the entire world is expected to know everything. Understand that. The second thing is, it's okay if you forget the concepts, but do not forget indentation. Do not forget to add comment, because it is very important for you guys to build that habit right now. So down the line, you are not annoyed seeing so many different errors that Python is going to give you. And another thing that I want you guys not to forget is to leave a comment down below with the quiz answers. Leave a comment down below if you have any sort of suggestions, feedback. I'll be more than happy to go about picking all of that, because ladies and gentlemen, a lot more Python content is coming your way. I'm working on it every single day. So make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel so that you never miss any of the episodes that I'm going to be putting out. Python is going to be used in a lot of domains that we'll be working in. The basics of Python, be it web development, be it machine learning, deep learning, AI. We're going to be writing Python code all throughout. So make sure you have your foundation strong, and we're going to be building more and more. So every single episode, we're going to build it from the previous episode. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at the previous episodes, every episode that has ever come out, there is a link in the description box. So make sure to take a look at that. And thank you all for taking your time to being a part of this episode. I hope that you guys got to take away a ton of different things. As always, stay tuned. Have a great day ahead. Go eat your biryani, go drink your chai, go do whatever it is that you want right now. But whenever you get time, try to practice one or two of these small things. And I'm looking forward to your quiz answers. All right, guys. See you in the next one.